Welcome, everybody. My name is Anderson Williams. I'm with Shore Capital Partners. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning here. I'm excited to have you guys here for a special webinar in the Shore University series on executive communication and personal brand. How do you want to be known? Today, we're excited to welcome Kimberly Pace, who's the CEO of Executive Aura, is a professor at Vanderbilt University School of Business, and many other things, as you'll learn today. So I'm going to pass it to her and get out of the way, and we'll learn something together today. Thanks for being here.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you. Today, our topic is on executive communication and personal brand. And so my hope is within this less than an hour that we have time, that you'll gain some tips and some new ways to think about your executive presence and how you communicate as leaders of your company. Feel free, if you have questions, to use the Q&A section. You can also chat them in if that's more helpful, and we'll leave some time at the end for additional questions. And I'll also leave my contact information so that you can reach out for anything that you need. So I love this quote by Lee Iacocca about that you can have the most brilliant ideas of what's going on in your head, but if you can't get them across, they're really not going to get you anywhere. And that happens to all of us. We have things that we're thinking about, strategy, growth, change management, new processes, new procedures, new products that we have, but we can't do it by ourselves. So we can have these great ideas, but we've got to be able to communicate and work through other people in order to be successful at that. So I have this philosophy with my company, Executive Aura, that is this think, lead, and act like a CEO. And part of this for me is that communication is not just a soft skill. I'm fine with that, but it's really a sharp skill. You already know this because in the leadership positions you are, sometimes the jobs are not so hard, but all of the communication and all the people on a day-to-day is the stuff that can drive us crazy. So we want to be able to think, lead, and act. And what I mean from that, from a communication standpoint, is the think always starts with the diagnostic portion of the audience. Now, of course, we're thinking this. If we're going to go in and do a presentation or try to make a sale or do an investment pitch, whatever it is, we're always starting with the diagnostic of the audience. But when you're in a hurry and you've got a whole long to-do list that you're trying to execute on, sometimes we go with what we're just natural at versus really what is the audience that we need. And once we've done that part of the research, then we create the presentation that we want. What sets you apart from others as an executive and as a leader of a company is that you're spending more time than others thinking about trends. And that should influence your executive communication and have a huge part on your thinking. So whether it's about expertise and personalization, that major trend that's happening in healthcare to retail, to technology that we have, whether it is about how younger generations really work about connections and crowds. You know, I'm an Xer, so I remember, like my parents say, don't hitchhike, for example. And now I get frustrated if there's not an Uber or Lyft to pick me up. So it really has changed the way we do business. And sometimes I'll be with leaders that will say, well, I don't really understand millennials. And I'm always like millennials are like 37 now. They're old. It's not about understanding millennials. It really is about understanding Zs and how Zs think and how Cs behave and how Cs are going to interact with us and our products. And they're a very large generation, and really being able to pay attention to all those. So those are just some examples of things that influence us before we ever communicate. The second one is lead, and really understanding different leadership styles that each of us has and how we lead, communicating that data. I really admire, we all study other executives and watch other executives. I greatly admire Indra Nooyi and how she is able to, her high adaptability and flexibility in her leadership style that she has. But for all of us, it's all about leading in a way that gets to the results that we're trying to achieve through our strategy. I don't see communication as something that's out here. Communication, culture, all the ways we act and behave have to be connected back to our strategy. You might have read this article that you see in the bottom right. Daniel Goleman on Emotional Intelligence wrote this really powerful article called Leadership That Gets Results. And in it, he describes these different leadership styles. So you see those on the left part of your screen, and then gives a definition of what each of these styles are: compliance, demanding, mobilizing people to a vision, creating that affiliative harmony that we work with people we love, forging consensus, asking people what their ideas are, setting the standard for how other people should behave by how we model, and then developing people. No matter where we are, anywhere on the spectrum of our career, we want to work with people that really care about our own development. Now, for each of us, you probably are looking at these, and for yourself, doing a reality check saying, oh, I'm like a combination of 3 of these. Okay, so you might say that. But the reality is we have to be great at all of these and be really comfortable with all of these. And some of these, like demanding compliance and even pace setting, we have to be careful that it doesn't impact the work climate if we stay in that too long. But many people will say, oh, I'm definitely not coercive. I had a boss that was that way. Never want to be that way as a leader. But the reality is, if the building is on fire, you're not going to go to democratic. How do you want to get out of the building? Right? You're immediately going to say, get out, and here's how we get out now for it. So each of these, and when we're busy and when we are stressed, we also have a tendency to live within just one of these and really go to what I would say intuitively that is your leadership style. So having enough of humility and high self-awareness that you can move within those styles. And then the third part is the act like a CEO. And what I mean by this is from your behaviors and the actions that you model, that you're looking for this beautiful balance between confidence so that other people really do want to follow you, but also humility. This sense that it takes others around me to be able to be successful at what we do. And we need to sit kind of right at that sweet spot in our executive communications and our presence so that both of that comes through, confidence with humility for it. And we start by doing that, by doing the investment in our emotional intelligence. You know, I always say, like, think about the 5 people you work with all the time, and quickly, can you name what really motivates them? Not what you think motivates them, but what really motivates them as individuals. And the hardest one that I find in all of emotional intelligence is truly self-awareness as a leader, because when you're in those top positions, very few people will be truth tellers. I mean, I can think of somebody just recently that I was talking to of a Fortune 100 company. And I was talking to 2 other leaders, and they were really struggling about something that was happening on their team. And I said, well, basically, have you told your boss? Have you talked with your CEO about this, about what's going on? And they're like, no, we don't really plan to talk to him. We plan to manage around it. Right. So that sense of having enough of self-awareness about how you communicate to be really effective in your leadership position. So the way that I talk about self-awareness is what I call your authentic personal brand. And this is not creating your TikTok channel. This is not about your Instagram followers. I mean, you can do some of these things as a leader within a company, but this really is about making sure that who you are authentically is actually communicating the message that you want to communicate with the other person. And it does start with just a reality check and caring about this. Now, emotional intelligence does take that. So you met me less than like 4 minutes ago, and I could get off right now and I could reach out to you, and you could say, one of you could say, oh, do you remember Kimberly Pace? Let's say Anderson followed up with you. And one of you could say, yeah, I remember she started talking about executive communication and personal brand. I got some good ideas from that. Another person could say, who? Right? which is not necessarily a negative that you didn't remember me. But if my intention was that I was saying something helpful to you, I might at least care that the message got through, even if it wasn't me. And then the third thing would be that someone said, oh, yeah, I remember that person. She was way too happy. Like, no one should be that happy. And I could say, I don't care what that person thinks, right? That doesn't make any difference. But if I really care about emotional intelligence, then what I become really interested in is if my intention was to communicate very effectively, why didn't it work that time? Why didn't it work with that individual? And I want to be constantly learning about my own communication style so that I can adapt. So, an investor, a new partner, a vendor, a new customer, that I'm able to adapt more quickly into being able to communicate in an executive way that is communicating the message. Scott Davis wrote this book a few years ago about building a brand-driven business, and I like two parts of this definition that you see on the screen. One is something you do consistently. So, let me just think about this. If I went into your closet right now and I opened your closet door, how many of you would have everything in your closet perfectly organized? I don't know if you're raising your hand, but if you're raising your hand, I love you. I don't completely understand you, but I love you. People that have everything really organized in their personal life quite often are very organized and self-disciplined at work. So it'll be from how they organize their desk to how they get their to-do list done. Now, I can do this to be successful, but it's not a natural strength for me. I'm the kind of person that kind of walks in, is like, where did I put my keys in the moment? But I can come up with a creative idea very quickly, but it's not something I can do consistently. The other word in here is differentiated. What is it that makes you unique? Why you, and why is that really connecting with that? So, an exercise that if I was working with you doing executive coaching is I would have you think about your desired personality. Now, once again, this can't be something that's made up or something that I inspire to be. It has to be something that's truly, authentically you and how you want to be seen. So I always encourage people to not be vague. So I wouldn't say that I want to be known as a communicator. I'd want to be known as a strategic corporate communicator, for example. Also, don't put things that are obvious. So I wouldn't say I'm extroverted or friendly because I'm very extroverted almost all the time. So what is it that you as a leader that you want to be known for? And go ahead and write those down somewhere, because we're going to use that as a part of our training today for you to think about how you want to be described by others in a professional setting. The other thing that I would ask you to really work on is to really clarify what it is that makes you unique. Why you? Why should we be sold on you? Why are you the best person leading this company at this time? What is the unique perspective, experience, ideas that you have that sets you apart from other people? And have clarity on what that is, because there is something that really does make you unique. And that's going to really help as you're communicating not just with investors and consumers, but also in the communities in which you live. What is that uniqueness that you have? And we want to put all of those phrases that you had, that you described yourself as a desired brand personality, into a very simple model. And this is how I use the model for almost everything communication. So if you see this little circle here, I've got pre-presence, presence, and post-presence. So pre-presence just means before people actually meet you face to face. Presence is when people are right in front of you. And post-presence is after the meeting is over. So it's always easier to talk about other people. So just think about this in your own head. Let's imagine that you've set up a meeting with someone, maybe for the very first time. We'll even make it more simple, for the first time in the presence. So for you personally, what are things that influence your perception before the meeting ever starts? Like, what are some of those things that might influence you before the meeting begins? The presence would be, what are the things that influence you when the person first walks in the door? Like, let's say it's the first 2 minutes of the meeting. What are the things that are influencing you? How they're listening, their handshake, how they treat other people around you, what they bring with you. What are those things that influence you? And then the post presence is after the meeting is over. Now, what are the things that people influence you? This might be their follow up. All right, how quickly they followed up. Did they do what they said, or did they do the bare minimum? This could also be what other people say. So if I'm interviewing someone and you're interviewing someone, you're my colleague, we might have different opinions on the exact same interview, but that might immediately influence me because I appreciate your perspective that you bring. Right. So if you look at this as kind of a model to remember in communication, there's probably one of these areas that you're stronger than the others, right? So maybe you're really great at presence and getting things done and the pre-presence on the front end, being prepared, but all the little details on the back end get overwhelming for you. Or maybe you're great at doing all the preparation and you're great at closing it at the end, but you sort of wing the meetings that you're having in the presence. But we have to be very consistent in building out our personal brand strategy in each of these areas. So I'm just going to give you some quick ideas for things to consider, and we could talk about this later on. One is what I would say is just your curb appeal. One of the first things that I'm going to do, besides asking if somebody knows you, is I'm probably going to Google you. Right. I'm going to look at your LinkedIn profile. Do you know people that I know? What I might notice about the type of company you've worked for, maybe even where you went to school. All those things very quickly start influencing my perception. And so when you thought about those desired brand adjective descriptions that you wanted for yourself, if I looked at something online about you, would they match up? So that's an example of making sure that your curb appeal is really connecting with who you are authentically. Another thing would be making sure your expertise comes through. So sometimes, for example, I might go to somebody's LinkedIn and it's just so vague. I'm not sure what they really do or why they're really good at what they do. So you want to make sure that that's coming through even before that I meet you. Your reputation is related to what people say when you're not in the room. So one of the first things, especially if you're new at a company, I always say if you've been there 100 days, making sure that you're meeting people outside just your area. But I would even say in top companies, I know somebody recently that was a controller of a company that became a CFO of the company, and all of a sudden had access to board members and other leaders across the company they hadn't spent a lot of time with. They knew, but maybe not on a very personal level. And so really setting up putting it on your calendar, because if it doesn't get on your calendar, it's probably not going to happen, about going to lunch with those people, having conversations, and really building relationships with individuals so that when you're not in the room and your name comes up, people know who you are and what you stand for and what kinds of expertise you bring to the table. And one last one that I'll share in the pre-presence is your writing style. And we could spend a lot of time on this, but think about even people in your company. I find in most companies that I work with, about 10% of people are what I would call solid writers. There might be 5% that are really good writers and 10% that are decent. There's a lot of people in the middle that have just picked up some bad writing styles. And then there's a whole group of people we probably should ask them to stop doing email, right? Because they're driving us crazy. Now, some of the big trends that I'm seeing right now in businesses is people using a lot of negative language in their writing. It's showing up in our political discourse. It's showing up in journalism. So I'm seeing more howevers, buts, can'ts, don'ts, unfortunately's. Nothing wrong with those words, except that as an executive and leader, I want to be more direct in the sense of I might use passive voice, for example, but I don't have to add these additional negative words. And if I want to be positive, I'm just going to use an action verb. Right? I'm going to avoid those exclamation points and I just want to be really clean. I would say be very careful about preaching in your writing. So that's like saying, as we talked about yesterday in our meeting, which sounds like a parent. So we want to make sure that that language is not showing up. We all know to protect our brand, never ever send anything through email that you're not 100% comfortable being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Just the reality of today. Nothing truly is private through email. And then being able to see your trends so that you can be really clear and concise, and being very aware of tone. So those are just some examples. There are many others to think about from your strategy in the pre-presence. Now, moving on to presence, I just want to talk about these two in the middle here around first impressions. Has anyone read that Malcolm Gladwell book, Blink? Right, we probably all have. The sense about being able to go in and read the room. So if you are able to go in and read the room and measure the energy of the room, facial expressions, body language, what is actually happening in the room, and read it correctly, it should immediately influence whatever you just came in to say or to present. And we have a tendency, once again, just because we're really busy, we've got things to do, to take the presentation or what we prepared and just deliver it as is. And we've got to be more sophisticated in adapting to be able to measure the mood and be able to really read the room. And in our presence, no matter who we are, we not only need to do all the preparation for our presentations and for our communications, but in the end, whoever it is, this is that humility part that has to come into play. It is not about data dumping or pushing information out. It really is about the audience and helping the audience to be successful, and the message really connecting with the audience. It's like, you, once again, you can have the best idea ever, but if it's not communicating with the audience, that is the most difficult part. So I spend a lot of time helping leaders not just communicate, but to communicate in a way that's persuasive. Right. I think sometimes we think, well, if I give you enough data and enough of information behind it, that's going to persuade you enough, and that's going to change your actions and behaviors behind you. It doesn't really work that way, as we know. So when you're building out persuasive presentations, the first thing you really need to say is kind of like, what's what I call the big purpose? So it's that 10,000 foot level purpose of what you're trying to do. If I'm with a new partner, for example, in the business, no matter what I'm giving, maybe my real objective is to build trust at the very beginning. During COVID, as I was writing for many CEOs, no matter what kind of data we were giving them about how it was impacting the business or the supply chain, I was having them write underneath in their messages these places of inspiration, because their teams were getting tired and working a lot of extra hours, maybe working from home, doing these new things that they weren't comfortable with. Other times I have to communicate in a way that really does get people to act differently, think differently. And just because I have figured it out in my head doesn't mean that my team has figured it out. And so I would communicate in a different way and create my presentations in a very different way in order to write a communication that was really about that. And then other times I really do need to make the sale. I need the funding. I need the new service. I need this new partnership that we have to make the sale. And for each of these styles, I would write them differently and create those communications differently in order to really be successful in that. Now, when you're in the presence, and specifically you're in presentations where you have to be persuasive, there's some research, and it's always taken out of context. So let me really clarify it for just a moment. Alma Rabihan did this research on when I have to be persuasive, and maybe I have to be persuasive more in first impressions when people don't really know me really well. Like they can't read my dry humor, or they can't read exactly what I mean because they haven't spent a lot of time with me. In those situations, when I need to be persuasive and I need to influence their liking of what I'm saying, in other words, do they have a positive attitude about what I'm presenting to them? In each of those situations, I've got three things that I can use kind of in my toolkit. One is the words that I say. The second is the tone of my voice. And the third thing is my body language. Now, if this was 100% of the full message, what would you guess, just guess out of 100%, the words are of that persuasive message? Do you have a number in your head? Okay, what about the tone of the person's voice? What percentage do you think that is of the message? And then the body language. So body language, and his research that Albert did really focused on facial expressions, but there's been a lot more research added to it around like how you stand or how you sit at the table or your handshake. What percentage of that do you think is the total message? Now, what's fascinating about this is that the words are about 7% of the message, tone about 38% of the message, and body language is 55%. Now, this does not mean that the words don't matter. Words do matter. Now, we could probably debate this around messaging and politics and media training, that sometimes I will hear, for example, politicians not really use the right words, but because of their tone or their body language, the ticker line on the favorability line keeps going up on the screen, right? But they're not saying the right words and people are clapping, and I can get frustrated. But in business, the words really do matter and how we communicate. But as you can see, tone of voice and body language is huge. And what I find happens is the more intellectual people are, the more advanced they are, that sometimes they think a lot about the words and they're not thinking about the others. So if you go to the phone, what happens? Your body language just went away, which now we're still assuming, though, like if I'm on the phone with the cable people, I kind of assume what their facial expression still might be. And then if you go to email, what goes away? Now your tone of voice has gone away. And now every word you choose and the connections of those words are still influencing what we think about tone and what we think about the body language of the person writing it. So we need to concentrate especially on these other two, of tone and body language. So I'm going to make some assumptions that some of you maybe played sports growing up, right? Or maybe played an instrument or did something performance based. But let's just take sports, for example. If you played sports growing up, you did drills to improve, whether that was hitting it with your bat or shooting the basketball, whatever it is that you were doing, you did drills in order to get better. Maybe even now you're on a running program. I've got a friend that ran the Boston Marathon this week, and she's been on a running program. And so you get better and better at what you do because of skills. So there's some skills that I like to work with people to really develop. And I'm going to give you 4 of those. The first one is around connect. And this is about really seeing people, whether it's around the table or in a large room, or even, and we'll talk more about this through video conferencing, but really being able to not just kind of look around the room, but to connect with people and listen at the same time that you're speaking. If not, it's not a two-way conversation. Even if people aren't speaking back, they are speaking back through their body language, through how their energy is in the room, how they're even looking up when you are speaking. And it's your job, whether you're leading a small group meeting or you're speaking at a larger event, to make sure that you are really connecting with the audience. The second thing is not to make fun of anyone on a day-to-day basis. This happens when people get into what I call speaking mode, and things called HAG show up. And HAG stands for hideous, awkward gestures. Okay, so hideous, awkward gestures would be thumbs up, gun shooting, flapping your arms when you speak, holding on for dear life. This could be men, for some reason, have a tendency to put their hands in their pockets or their hands on their hips more, where women sometimes will do odd things with their feet. But anything that's distracting, you don't want to do things that are distracting. You want to do things that are really bringing people in and it help to be able to communicate your message. The good news is, between videotaping and Zoom, where you can record, you can quickly see where your hideous, awkward gestures are, and you'll get rid of them if you'll just watch yourself. The third thing is to engage your face. Don't get so into your own head that you forget that the message has to come through. So I see people all the time get up and they'll say, I'm really excited about what we're going to do here together. Or I really have a passion for a product that we're doing. And they look so sad. So if you say words like passion, excited, things that are positive, you actually have to look it in your face, or there's no way we really believe it. The same sort of thing if you're firing somebody and you're happy about it, you can't say, "You're fired." You have to be aware. I know somebody that I call them, they have the cat look in their face. And what that just means is they've learned to control, they give too much facial expressions. And so if they're with somebody and they think, "I don't really like this person," or "I don't think this person is really intelligent," they have a look that they have in their face that's sort of just neutral, that doesn't look condescending, that they've had to work on. Other people need to add more facial expressions. They kind of just go blank in the face. Now, they're not doing this with their friends or with their family. They're just doing it when they're at business and they're communicating business. The best communicators are people that take the best of themselves and they use it to really connect with the audience. And the most advanced way in a skill development, this fourth one, is to vary your voice. Sometimes stop. Sometimes use a pause. Use some variance. Sometimes be louder, sometimes be quieter. But really think about the quality of your voice and skills and drills you can do so that it doesn't sound monotone. It doesn't sound like you're reading, that you really are able to use your voice to connect with your audience. Now, I want to spend just a few moments specifically talking about this world of Zoom and our teams or whatever it is that you use with clients or others. But I know at Shore Capital, many times, most of the time, you're using Zoom, which I do prefer. But if you're using Zoom, some things are very important. One is lighting. Every single one of you, I have a big ring light right behind my monitor. If not, there's a window in front of you, or you can even click on the little arrow, and you want to do this right now, you can, around where it says stop video or your video settings right there. You can go to video settings and you can even in Zoom manually move so that you have more light. That's important. You want great light. You can also, I have a smaller one that I carry around that I kind of keep in my car here, right? So you can see this one here that I have. And then I have a very small one that is just like this big around that I keep in my bag or in my car all the time so that I can just clip it on my phone or clip it so that you have good lighting so that you can see. It's an easy investment to make and you should. The second thing is to make sure you have great sound. Now, I'm wearing a headset, which I do think helps. I think I heard the phone ring earlier here at my home office in the other room. It blocks out my own sound, but that's not just wearing headphones. Having a good microphone, whether this is just a simple Logitech or have one that connects, that you can just hook to your monitor or to your laptop so people can hear you very clearly. Your eye level, you should make sure that your monitor is at eye level or slightly above. You don't want to be looking down at people or way up at people. You want to make sure that it feels like you're talking with them, not to them, as if you're sitting around a table. You want it as natural as possible. And I would say make sure you only have about this much room at the top of your head and that you back up. I'm pretty far from my monitor. And the reason I want that is because I want to be able to use some hand gestures to be able to communicate. So I could say, what do you think about this? It's a big issue. Here are 3 things I want you to think about. But you want to be able to connect through the camera. Wherever your camera is, you have to be able to look through the camera. Somebody might ask me a question, I have to look down to read body language, but when I answer the person, I have to come up through that camera. And then the last thing I'll just mention is think about what's behind you, right? It represents your brand. These are 9 pictures from 9 different countries that I've traveled to, and I love photography kind of as a side thing. And do something that connects with your brand and who you are that's important to you so that it feels more authentic and real versus something that doesn't really connect with your audience and your video style. So let me give you specifically in presence just some quick things to think about. I've already mentioned that diagnostic of your audience. Really do that. Do not assume that you know the audience. and know who's in the room and be able to connect with those individuals as business leaders or for who they are, the age, the gender, who is in the room. The second thing you want to be able to do then is build your framework. So this really is about making sure that you're thinking about what kind of model that you want to use. Just like we have financial models or others, what kind of model is we want to use. So I'm just going to give you two things that I'd love to see in every model if I ever had the opportunity to work with you to see you present. One is a grabber. That is the first thing you say when people enter the room. Right? The first thing that you say to them that gets them, that grabs their attention. Okay. It can be a quote. It could be a statistic. It could be a story about something. But what are you saying that gets people to engage? And then the last thing is, what's the sticker? What's the last thing that you say? Because that might be truly all they remember is the last thing you said. So always consider that whenever you're communicating, whether it's in a meeting or a pitch that you're doing or what you're communicating, what's the final thing that you say? The third thing we're going to do after the diagnostic and building frameworks, and there are many different frameworks to use, I just gave you two quick things, is you want to really think about persuasive strategies. I love this book. You probably have all read it, called Made to Stick. Quick ideas about how to make something not simple, but simplistic so that it stays sticky and that it's really memorable for what you do. So I encourage you maybe to read that book. And the reason we want things to be sticky is that we know that in things like storytelling and all the data and dashboards that we have, we can't just throw statistics at people. This is a huge problem. We have all this access to amazing data, and I see so many leaders create 40 slides of data and they dump it and push it all out, and then they hope that their teams will be able to take it and do something with it. And they get frustrated that the next week they've done the same thing again and there hasn't been that much change. And it's because we have to take the data and bring it alive so that people know why the data matters and what the data really does for someone else. So that's really important that we work through that. The other way to kind of make it sticky too is to what I call make it Twitter friendly. So think about this, and it's probably not your current company because I know you've all worked on it at Shore Capital, but maybe a previous company that you've worked with. Long mission statement, vision statement, maybe 10 values. You have KPIs, 4 strategic directions, independent department that you do, and then you get frustrated while sometimes members of your team or your company don't really understand where the company is going. You'll get that feedback. You'll get an employee engagement survey. And really part of it is we've made it so complicated because of politics or for whatever reason we have, that we haven't made it really clear and concise. Because most of the time, most people can never remember more than 3 things. So, and that's how most people are consuming information, is even Twitter friendly headlines. So how do we really think that way and change our communication style to make it really easy for people? And talk about making it easy for people. Another great persuasive strategy is to make sure it's not too hot. Like, it's not so hard to do that people are overwhelmed by it, but it's also not too cold or too easy that people are like, well, we can do that next month or next quarter. That we have to think about how we present things to people so that they get excited, they feel challenged, but they also know that they're going to get a win out of it. And the win is not like years and years away. And then we can add to it in our communication persuasion strategy styles that we do. An area that I would encourage you also to invest in is not just what I would call formal presentations, but it's this kind of speak and think and speak on your feet. And that first part is really big. Like, you need to think about what you're saying before you just open up your mouth and speak. And all levels within all companies, many people have trouble with this. How do you be clear and concise and compelling when you haven't had time to prep for what it is you're speaking on? You're on a panel and people ask you Q&A questions, and you want to be one of those people that can just be really sharp in your answer and not kind of just go off rambling, or wish you would have said something that you didn't get to say that you thought about later. And most of this has to do with organization, having very strong organizational models that are in your head, so that when you're asked a question, like one I use all the time for myself, for example, is problem relevant solution. So somebody asked me how I would solve this problem. I grab this model in my head. So I'm able to say, let's remind ourselves the problem we're really trying to solve and why this is relevant to our company, X and X. And it's because of this that the solution that I propose is X. Right? You just want to be clear and concise and know and really understand new models to help you to really be able to speak on your feet. Also, a part of your brand in the presence is being great at leading meetings. I mean, think about meetings that you've attended. Um, there are some people that I know that I go to a meeting with, and I can think of some of you that are maybe on this call that I know pretty well, that I actually love to go to meetings with these individuals. And it's because they're organized, they start it well, they end it well. We get great things done. They facilitate well. They're not boring. They're engaging. All of those things that make a great meeting. And then I would say 75% of the other meetings that I attend, at least, I'm not excited about going to. They're not super organized. The leader of it is not really a great facilitator. Everybody doesn't know why they're in the room. So learning the skills to be brilliant at engaging your team in the meetings, because that might be your one big touch point that week. The other way I like to think about it is if I've got 10 people sitting in the room, I like to average out what I pay them per hour. Right? And that's what you're spending on the meeting. Or if I've got a leader that's speaking to 1,000 people in a room, I like for them to think about why spending 20 hours prepping for that 15-minute presentation, what the return on investment is if they do it really well, and how to really be able to do that in those meetings that are important to you. In the presence portion of you as a leader too, you will all be having to communicate as a part of your executive communications through crisis. And the crisis is not it or not if, but when it's really going to happen, and making sure that you really are thinking about the outcome. Now, as a part of this, you want to be really good and have training in dealing with the media. So in my background, I started off my career in television and radio. And it's not that you don't want to answer their question, but it's not a typical like business transaction where the person asks the question and you answer it. It really is more like they ask the question and now I'm in charge of the interview. So I really get to talk about what I want to talk about. So really learning skills, and some of that is that think and speak on your feet portion of it, so that very quickly you are able to give very strong transition phrases to talk about the things that you want to talk about and not get trapped in things that don't matter, because it can really separate you. It's not that we're sitting around as leaders going, I want a crisis and let's let a crisis happen. It's not that at all, but it is about how we as leaders handle that crisis can really be the difference in how people see us and how people support us, and their brand reputation of you as a leader is huge in being able to do it, as well as in our executive communications and our leadership, running scenario planning with your teams, especially your executive team, so that everybody is really good at handling crisis and knows kind of how the crisis plan really works for you. So those are all some examples. I gave you some for pre-presence. I've given you some now in presence, and I want to talk just briefly about post-presence. So in the post-presence, one of the most powerful ways that you can really help your brand is the power of thank you. I do culture audits and cultural strategy plans within companies, and I can only think of one company truly in all the years that I've done that people say, oh, I feel like I have been thanked enough. What people will say is, I don't mind doing the work. I feel valued maybe in this company, but it'd be okay if someone just occasionally thanked me for what I'm doing. And so the power of thank you. I know an executive leader in healthcare that it made a commitment about 20 years ago that he was going to do 2 thank you notes every day, handwritten. He's done it his entire career. And what's fascinating to me is I can walk by people's offices that were there, a letter from 10 years ago that is still up in someone's office, because it's so rare that an executive and a leader actually writes thank you notes. So that's an example. I can think of someone else that it was a powerful story about what they did to thank their team that was going through a really getting ready to go. They were getting ready to sell the company and to another company, and people had been working long nights and weekends for weeks and weeks. And so it was Thanksgiving period, and this person sent a thank you basket to people's homes, and thanking the spouse and thanking the kids for their part in making this all happen of what they were doing. Now, he had to start with the motivations of the audience, right? What motivates? He thought, almost everybody on my executive team happens to be married or have a significant other, and everybody had kids. And he knew that one of the things that was important to motivations of these individuals was their family. And because they were working all these extra times, their families were really important. So you can imagine the impact that this had, right? The person calls their spouse at work and says, "You're not going to believe I just got this great basket," and a personal note about why what I do is important. And gosh, they really value what you do. And I got a personal note about why they value you so much. And that makes me feel great about what we're doing. And then 3 days later, the person says, "I need to do like 3 hours of work on a Saturday." They go, "I get it. I get it. I know why this is really important for what you're doing." So the power of thank you, and not just being general. I mean, consider great thank yous you've received in your life. They're unexpected and they're very personal. So what can you do to add those in? And then as you think about this whole idea of building these relationships in your brand, you need to go back and look at it on a regular basis. Is this really what you want to be coming through? And do you clearly see yourself? And do you ask people, like I like to ask people on a regular basis, tell me 3 things that I can do to help you be more successful. So if I ask those questions, quite often, if I really listen, people are going to give me feedback on my own leadership style, my management style. And that's how you get better and better at what you do and being able to connect with individuals. So in final just summary, I want in this idea of executive communications and personal brand, kind of bring it back to how I talk about it quite often, is in the sense of your aura, your essence, your presence that you have, and in each of these 4 areas. So one of them is authenticity. And what do I mean by authenticity, and how can you really be authentic? The best way that I find is to be brilliant at active, purposeful listening. And that doesn't mean we have our phone and we're answering person, but this is really about sitting through the pauses, sitting through the silence, and really listening to what's important to the other person. And I would say it almost takes always a little longer than you think. And you can't just jump in and solve it, or jump in as soon as there's a pause. You have to ask a question like, give me the 2 ways that you would solve this. And be really comfortable to sit in silence. And there's skills that you can learn to be brilliant at that. But the why that matters, I disagree with you, but I really listen all the way through. And then I say back to you, so let me share with you what I've heard. And then I start sharing what I've heard, and you're going, yeah, yeah, finally, Kimberly's got it. Yeah, yeah, Kimberly, exactly. That's exactly what I meant. And then if I say, well, here's why I want to recommend we do it this way, right? Well, you can disagree with me, but you're not going to feel disrespected ever, because we are going to have a connection that we really heard each other. And that's a skill you can develop if that is not naturally a good skill that you have. We've already talked about the second U, uniqueness, about really considering the why you portion of it. And this has to do with your purpose and meaning, but also what are those great skills that you have that you bring, that you are really sharing with your team and your customers and your boards and the others that are around you. The third thing in the R is reality. This goes back to that reality check. Somebody told me years ago the importance of having what I called a personal board of advisors. Okay, this is not like your advisory board for your organization. These are like your personal advisory board. So I have to just tell you this great story because it's dramatic, but it tells you the importance of truth telling. So I had an individual, we're in Paris, and during our time, it was a birthday that I had, and I said to this person who's almost exactly 10 years older, I said, "You've known me for 15 years. I'm going into this new decade. What advice do you really have for me?" And this person says, "Okay, do you really want the advice?" And I'm like, "Yes, I value your opinion. I want your advice." So we're like a Guy Savoy. We're drinking a little more wine. And finally I said, "No, I really want the advice." And the person says, "Do you really want the feedback?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really want the feedback." We went on and on. And finally I said, "I really want the feedback." And the person said, "Do you really, really want it?" Like it was like a 3 times the charm. And I was like, "Yes, I really want it." So about 2 hours later, this person stopped. And I can just say that I did not sleep well for about 6 months, but it transformed me. It transformed how I looked at my business. It transformed my leadership style. It transformed my priorities and where I sat them on the priority list. A lot of the stress that I was putting on myself was self-imposed because I had some of those out of whack, and it was transformative. So, who are the people in your life that are truly the truth tellers for you on a regular basis that give you that reality check? And that's how we keep transforming no matter what age we are or where we are in our leadership. It's when we stop and we only believe what we say and we never listen to other people that we really miss that reality check. And then the last part is the authority. And it's not just about articulating results and clear goals. It really is about providing a vision. You want to be the kind of leader that other people want to follow, not that they're forced to follow. And that almost always comes back to vision. Having such a bold, compelling vision that you've communicated in such a way that people want to work with you. They're loyal. They're excited about coming to work. They're excited about partnering with you and being able to do that. So these are some of my big tips for you today. I do hope, I know it's through a webinar series, but feel free to reach out, text, phone, email, LinkedIn. I would love to have the opportunity to stay in touch. And Anderson, I will throw it back to you and any Q&A questions that anyone has. I'm happy to stay on for a little longer and answer any questions. Thanks so much.